today I'll continue my road down AI. Um, so I did use the what has become sort of almost ubiquitous, everywhere kind of thing, where you have the grafting of a vocal timbre onto your own voice. And I use that. That probably will still, and I'll continue to use it, I think, into the future because it's interesting, and that's a sort of a quick and dirty way of getting different voice sounds and maybe doing harmony as I did in one song. Certainly a lot cheaper than hiring a real singer, for sure. But it ends up being only as good as the person who's actually singing. You can certainly put Frank Sinatra's voice on you, but it doesn't mean you're going to sing like Frank Sinatra. Different thing entirely. So if you're a good singer, that's a really good. People have found it extremely useful if you are a legitimately good singer, which I'm not. But if you are, then it can be a very useful time-saving and money-saving way of getting a different voice, getting a harmony going, getting singing with somebody, even if the person really isn't there. So it's very useful in that kind of way. But there are other things out there that actually generate vocals from scratch, rather than you singing it or someone singing it and then you working with that. In fact, you generate it from a zip. And so those are vocal synthesis programs, which also might use artificial intelligence to help generate the voices, but are not exactly the same thing or even really the same kind of application. So I happened upon a program called Synthesizer V, made by a company called Dreamtonics, and I decided to try it out, and it's a vocal synthesis program. So you literally start from scratch. You literally type in the words you want it to sing, and you put the notes where you want them to be, much like in a standard musical sequencing program. And then you have a whole plethora of parameters around each note to tell it how you want it to sing that note. And it employs models of real singers, some artificial intelligence learning to help bring that to life, so to speak. But it's also not exactly that same kind of application. So it's really more what we call an expert system application. And since I majored in math, I can appreciate the difference. And before I stop, I'll just give you one anecdote not anecdote, but I was listening to the guy talk at length about this, and he made an interesting point. He talked about that when they made this system, they had a lot of studies. They do studies as they were trying to develop it to understand, what are they doing right, what are they doing wrong. And they would ask people to listen. Can you tell the difference between the real voice and the singing and the synthesized voice and so forth? And all the time, people could, generally speaking, tell the difference. And then they would ask him a really interesting, good question, which is, okay, which do you like better? And why do you like that voice better than this voice? Whatever the one was that they liked. And so they carefully listened to what people were saying about what they preferred in terms of the voices, which ones they liked better. And what they found was that as time went on and they incorporated these things into the program about what people preferred, it got to a point where they went from, people knowing that the real voice is the real voice and also, generally speaking, preferring the real voice, to a point where people could mostly tell the difference between the two, but half the time, people would actually prefer the synthesized voice over the real voice, even though they knew that the synthesized voice wasn't the real voice. But they still preferred it in terms of the music and the sound and everything else. And that's really interesting when you think about it. So it's like there's sort of a threshold that you get to where something becomes viable in its own right as a musical instrument and as a way of expressing something musically. And it becomes a viable instrument in itself, regardless of whether it sounds like some other thing, which you might have started out trying to do. So in this case, yeah, you could tell at times that the voice is not a real voice. But on the other hand, it still works very well, and you just sort of forget about it if you let yourself, at least. You forget that it's not a real voice, and you just enjoy it anyways. So it's sort of interesting in that kind of way. So now we'll have a song, like I said, from 1990, to be exact, a song called Innocent. and I use the voice in the program that have names. So the voice I use in the program was the voice Liam. So Liam is going to sing the song for you. And it's interesting. So from 1990, my song Innocent, sung by the synthesized voice Liam.
If my soul is all spent, can I still be innocent? Tell me, I wanna know. In this land I roam, searching for my home, where my heart can glow in this quiet zone. Beyond despair, it lingers like a ghost. In every step I feel the weight of what's real on dreams I love the most in this quiet zone. Time moves like the tide, pulling me away from the sun's sweet embrace. Now I'm losing the fight to hold on to the light that once lit up this place. Laughter fades away, left with all the scars. Dreams now feel distant, like forgotten memoirs. Beneath the embers, sorrow finds a home. Wistful memories in this heart they roam. Beneath the embers, sorrow finds a home. Memories like ghosts in this heart they roam. When the past is a torment, can I still be innocent? Will the stars light the way? In silence I confess, this heart's a fragile mess. This muted serenade in this quiet song.